This patient came in for a consultation because her breasts were positioned more toward the armpits, and her nipples, well, it looked like they weren't getting along. They were literally turning away from each other. She had a very flat cleavage, and her nipples didn't point inward, which made her quite self-conscious. She wanted to achieve a soft, rounded cleavage with nipples that naturally face forward. In this kind of case, I usually recommend an inframammary incision. That is, an incision under the breast. If you use an armpit incision, you have to create a tunnel all the way from the armpit to the breast, which can cause the implants to spread outwards. And especially when lying down, the breasts can look even more separated. Also, the amount of breast tissue the patient has makes a big difference in how we design the implant pocket. If the patient has at least a B cup or more of natural tissue, we can go with a subfascial placement. But in this patient's case, she had very little natural tissue, so we used a dual plane technique where the implant sits partly under the muscle. This helps prevent the implant from being too visible or palpable under thin tissue. The most important part is how well can we bring the implant pockets toward the center. But that doesn't mean just cutting toward the middle without caution. If you completely detach the pectoral muscle, you might get what's called an animation deformity or double crease. And ironically, the breasts can end up looking even farther apart. That's why I always preserve as much of the pectoral muscle as possible. And I very carefully dissect the inner side of the pocket. For the outer part, I keep the dissection minimal. If you create a nice inner pocket, but then make the outer pocket too wide, the implants will naturally drift outward. Another key point, the lower and outer breast junction is an area where the skin stretches easily over time. So you have to reinforce this area well to prevent sagging later on.